Well, it's a great pleasure to be able to join in this tribute to Clyde, who became a good friend as well as a good colleague over the years. He was a one-off. Nobody quite liked Clyde. His enthusiasm and energy and joie de vivre will be missed by all of us. And in a very real sense, he injected productive energy into the CBD program. He was a very good scientist, but he was working with a scintillating collection of amazing international stars. What he had particularly was a strategic vision that pulled the group together. Now, it would be easy to assume that inevitably the program will be the weaker as a result of his absence. And of course we will miss the fun and excitement that he provided. But to focus on what we will miss is to entirely overlook the tremendous contributions he made that will continue to live on and indeed continue to grow because they have now such a firm basis. What I would like to do is to mention briefly what I see as his major contributions before going on to note the challenges that remain. I label these challenges rather than unanswered questions because Clyde would never have been dismayed by the extent to which so much remains unknown. Indeed, instead, as always with his insatiable curiosity, he would be looking for ways to meet those challenges. His lasting legacy should be the determination given to us to solve the problems provided by those challenges. That is a CBD determination that will, I'm sure, bring rich rewards. His achievements. Well, the first, I think, was, to use Clyde's phrase, the recognition of the importance of the biological embedding of experiences. He was not the first to identify the phenomenon, that goes back over half a century, but he was one of the first to put it at the very top of the agenda, at a time when so many psychosocial researchers remained adamantly uninterested in biology. For Clyde, following on biologists such as Robert Hind, to regard biology and the environment as entirely separate was a complete nonsense. Second, he emphasized the crucial importance of identifying the mechanisms that mediated the environmental impact on the biology. It would be only a slight exaggeration to say that he had a conversion from a geographical epidemiologist to an epigenetic evangelist. Epigenetics constituting, as we have heard, the chemical changes that influence gene expression. But to describe Clyde's involvement in epigenetics as a conversion is nevertheless an exaggeration because Clyde appreciated that epigenetics constituted just one of many possible biological mediators of environmental effects, meaning the mechanisms involved in their effects. Everyone's genes are, as we have heard, fixed from the outset, but their functional effects only come about when the genes are expressed in the tissues. Epigenetics concerns the features outside of the genes themselves that shape the influence of the genes. The tasks are to delineate the several interacting processes involved, and Clyde would have played a key role in meeting that challenge. Third, building on his background as an epidemiologist, he emphasized the narrowness of an exclusive focus on individual causes only at an individual level. Why was it that some population groups had rates of crime, family breakdown, poverty, and unemployment so much higher than others living in nearby areas. Was this just because birds of a feather flocked together, or were there social forces of some kind at work? What was striking too, that Clyde was insistent that such population approaches had to include health and illness indices. That implied, of course, that the solutions too might be best applied to populations and not just to high-risk individuals. Finally, although not himself primarily a trialist or evaluator of interventions, he was certainly not an ivory tower academic. For him, it mattered greatly that knowledge be put to good purposes, whether in terms of policy, prevention, or intervention. Once more, a key CIFAR goal. So, what are the challenges to be faced? First, if all environments tend to have epigenetic effects, or HPA effects, or structural brain changes, is there a degree of mildness below which there are few, if any, epigenetic changes? Does the type of environment matter? Are acute stresses the same as chronic adversities? The evidence certainly indicates that the HPA effects are not the same for the two, but does that also apply to the epigenetics? Do pleasurable, positive experiences have the same biological effects as unpleasant, abusive ones? Can the pattern of epigenetic changes differentiate abuse from neglect, and both of those from social disadvantage? Can the biological changes differentiate between sensitivity and stealing or strengthening effects? We know that some challenges enable individuals to come through stronger and less vulnerable than before. Equally, however, in other individuals or other circumstances, they become sensitized so that they exhibit increased susceptibility to later stresses. Is this difference reflected in a different biology? Most fundamentally, do we have sensitive and discriminating measures of the relevant environmental features? Can the biology be informative on the likely health effects? It's all very well to identify the stress physiology, but what connection does this have with either physical or mental ill health? One set of key features that differentiates responses to the environment are the polymorphic genetic markers, that is, the genetic features that determine individual differences. But what are the mediating biological processes? Do they, as some have suggested, involve epigenetic changes? Also, do they deal just with responses to adverse environments, or rather, do they involve responsivity to both good and bad environments? It seems evolutionary implausible that there would be genes concerned only with damaging environments. Perhaps the mechanism involved is a general responsivity to all environments. If that proved to be the case, there would be important implications for treatment and prevention. There are other challenges, but there's time to mention only one more. In the domain of biomarkers, it is common to find biological markers or indices that differentiate groups in terms of health outcomes. But it's rare indeed to find markers that are sufficiently reliable and sufficiently valid to be of use for differentiating individuals who will or will not develop disorders. Can those be developed to a point when they are useful at an individual level? Well, it would have been great, of course, if Clyde was still here to help with answering these questions, because undoubtedly he would, and his creative imagination and looking forward would have been a help. Much remains to be done, but helped by Clyde's vision, energy, and collaborative endeavours, his legacy will give CBD the strength and creative ideas to achieve what he was aiming for.